What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today, well, we are talking about a pretty huge one because this is the first release from this band in 7 years, and it's finally the second part of a two-part saga, 12 years in the making. And of course, I am talking about the latest offering from Wintersun, Time Part 2. This comes out on August 30th on Nuclear Blast Records, and this is Wintersun's fourth album overall. Of course, I recently picked up the previous three on a buying trip over in Cincinnati. I bought the self-titled, Time Part 1, and the Forest Seasons, got them all. Haven't gone through all of them yet, but I've gone through like the majority of the self-titled, and that is a beast of an album. And then of course I've heard amazing things about Time Part 1, whereas the Forest Seasons heard was good but kind of a drop-off. And here we are with Time Part 2. It's the second part of the Time series. And yeah, this is the first one of that series in 12 years, but their first full length in 7. And of course, you know, Jari, formerly of Insiphirum, this is his project, now full-on band after leaving Insiphirum or whatever the circumstances was there. But yeah, I'm finally talking about Wintersun on a full review. Now, of course, this band, particularly Jari's, unfortunately kind of garnered a bit of a reputation because, you know, he and the rest of the band started doing the crowdfunding thing, which a lot of people got a little bit up in arms about. I don't mind if a band crowdfunds for their albums because, you know, better, I guess, to just use the money that you get from that kind of thing and put it towards the studio time to make sure you have an album out as good as possible. And of course, a lot of people have their opinions about Jari and everything involving with the crowdfunding, especially considering long gaps between albums, especially in the past 12 years. However, of course, from reading into stuff, it had to do with a lot of delays and, like, writer's block and among, like, studio issues or, like, recording issues, among many other aspects. So it's taken a while to get it out, but it's finally out. Now let's talk about if it was worth it or not. So we kick things off with an intro track, Fields of Snow, which typically I do like intros as long as they're not just 1 minute of just nothing. No, this was a 4-minute intro, and it was really all about building up the mood of the album. Keyboards, piano, strings, and also like big classical drums, really kind of building the song, or really building the album up, I should say, because pretty much this whole album in terms of the songs connect to each other pretty well. It does flow really nicely. But then you get into the true opening track, The Way of the Fire, and you get these like folky acoustic guitars, kind of like Jari paying homage to his time in Insiphirum. But then again, you still get a lot of those kind of folky elements all across Wintersun's album, so I don't know if that's 100% accurate. But yeah, folky acoustics, and then right into huge tremolo melodies and blast beats that kind of harken back a little bit to bands like, I don't know, like Dissection and early Children of Bodom, like that kind of middle ground between like melodic black metal and melodic death metal, that kind of fusion. And of course, Jari's screams, I will say his screaming vocals are among some of the best screaming vocals I've ever heard. Yeah, they definitely kind of fit in line with black metal a little bit more, or maybe even comparable to like early Thomas Lindberg from At the Gates, like kind of that middle ground between melodeath and black metal screams. And then it gets even a little bit thrashy, like the riffs and the beats that follow do get into a little bit of a thrash sensibility. After all, the guitarist Teemu recently joined Megadeth full-time, and he's now in both bands doing all he can. So it doesn't shock me that there would be a little bit of a thrash tinge on a couple moments on this album, considering Teemu now in Megadeth. And then the clean vocals, I gotta say, like Jari's cleans, I'll touch more on those when we get to the final song, but here, definitely more on the gruffer side, kind of like a more rough version of Hansi from Blind Guardian kind of vocal when it comes down to the cleans. But of course, lead work across the board on this entire album, I would say, is almost perfect. Like, they range everywhere from shred to like classical flair, like neoclassical moments, but also lots of mood and feeling and power behind them. And I love the guitar harmonies that show up on this track as well. Even a nice tasty drum groove, which Kai, the drummer, he's a hell of a drummer. Like, of course, being in so many other bands like Rotten Sound, currently in Nightwish, also was in Swallow the Sun for a while, and Trees of Eternity. So the guy's got a hell of a pedigree, and he definitely showcases his drum talents all over the map. Then we get into One with the Shadows, which was not counting the Fields of Snow and the following track, Ominous Clouds, which was meant to be more of like a bluesy interlude. One with the Shadows, in terms of like the full range songs, the shortest one of the album at almost like between 6.5 and 7 minutes. This one honestly goes for a little more of a doom vibe. Like, it's slower and it's more lumbering as opposed to like triumphant, and it's a lot more of a moody song. Like, I do love how each of these songs kind of generate a different feeling. Like, The Way of the Fire was more of like a huge bombastic song, whereas One with the Shadows is going for more sullen moods and lots of feeling going on. Like, again, more of those gruff, clean vocals, and I do love the leads. They're more atmospheric, but showcasing that classical flair. And then Ominous Clouds, like I said, it was like 2.5 minutes of like almost bluesy guitars. But then we get into the big two songs. Storm being the first of the two. This one, arguably in terms of like what is the mood on it, definitely going for more somber, sorrowful, sullen moods. Like the clean guitars and the piano that starts this track off, definitely very sullen, very sad sounding, before you do kind of get back into blasts and tremolos. Although I would say maybe a little closer to melodic death metal as opposed to black metal. And there's even like heavier riffs that show up on here that kind of give off a little bit of a death metal vibe, I guess you could say. But like, I do love how they go for more bombast on this track, combined with that more sorrowful feeling. And then another like thrashy beat comes up here as well. And the clean vocals, I think by this point, Yari's cleans start to get more tuneful as opposed to like just gruffness, like rough around the edges kind of feeling. And I love how huge the song gets, and of course the acoustic guitars really bring out the sadness in the song, and of course atmospheric melody within the solos, and it was just all around an excellent song. And then you get to the closing track, the longest of the album at 15 minutes, or around 15 minutes, Silver Leaves, which I have heard a reviewer or two say it might be one of the best things Yari has ever done. Like, this song, definitely more on the doomy side once again, but this one kind of goes for like, kind of like a feeling of like triumph, but also like telling a memoir of a fallen warrior. And the influences on this track, far more on the Japanese side. Like, there's some Japanese folk and atmosphere on here, tasty acoustic licks, and of course like soaring melodies, and of course like Yari's vocals. Like, this is pretty much all clean vocals, going for more like tuneful low vocals. At times he'll get a little bit higher, not like mega high, but just higher than normal on this album. And of course, like, the strings are tastefully done on here, especially with like those Japanese folk elements going on. And that's pretty much how we end this. So I will say, in terms of the things that I didn't like about the album, one, I would say, especially in the final two songs, while they're excellent, they kind of overstay their welcome a little bit, especially with how they end. Like, Storm, the final couple of minutes is mostly just rain and thunder and classical ambience, which I get it was done to like carry over into Silver Leaves. And then Silver Leaves, final 2 minutes, all it is just winds and waterfalls. It's like, maybe could have done that for just 30 seconds, not 2 minutes. could have trimmed that down in that way. I mean, the album doesn't feel like it drags at all. Like, it's only nearly 49 minutes. It's 6 songs. Granted, 3 of them are 10 plus minutes, but they do a good job at balancing everything out. I just wish that, like, the last couple minutes of Silver Leaves could have been trimmed down to 30 seconds with the winds and waterfalls, and I think it would have helped end the album on a stronger note in terms of the atmosphere. And while I get why they extended the ending of Storm to kind of carry over into Silver Leaves, but maybe could have trimmed that down a little bit. Maybe just instead of like the first minute of just rain and thunder, just go straight into the classical ambience with the rain and thunder on top, and I think it would have helped make it stronger. And then really the biggest complaint that I have about this album would be the drum sound. Like, the production itself, like with the guitars, the bass, the vocals, and the folkiness and the classical, symphonic, orchestral stuff, whatever you want to say, was pretty well balanced and well done. The drums, though, in the mix, they sound quiet, but also the actual sound of them sounds really small. Like, the snare sounds very small. Like, it almost just sounds like barely a tap on the snare. Like, I will say, if the drums could have been a little more present in the mix and also a little more punchy to where it doesn't sound small but sound like a shotgun going off, like the damn snare could sound like a shotgun going off, that would have definitely made the production on this album over the top. But overall, was the album worth the wait? I would say, to a degree, yes, because at least when it comes down to songwriting and the songs themselves, they were quite good. Although the production could have been stronger, maybe some of the fat could have been trimmed off, and I think I would have given this a higher score. So overall, I'm going to go with a 3.5 out of 5. It is a really good album. I might pick it up just to have it in the collection, but I would probably go back to it if I felt like it, if I was in the mood for it. It is a really good album. It's just, yeah, like I said, whittle some things down, and also if the drums could have sounded bigger and better, then I'd say I would have probably given this a 4, maybe even a 4.5, but there are some issues on here, but for the most part, this is still really good. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think of Time Part 2 by Wintersun? Let me know in the comments below. Yeah, this weekend we got a lot of big ones to talk about, and unfortunately, some of those are going to have to be saved for Under the Radar, so there you have it with that. But thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.